Okay, the next step, this is still old information. We're going to import the zip file library, and we're going to read in our zip file of all the Weibo comments. This is also similar to, a lot of this code will be very similar to the graph example. I'm going to import this date utility. I'm going to set the max time to January 1st, 2014. Okay, so this is the exact same thing we did with the graph. We have all of the data in the zip file of all the comments ever, but for the purposes of this demo, to speed things up, I'm just going to take the last year of comments. So I have this variable here that's going to specify the cutoff point. Okay, as I'm scanning through the comments in each file, I'm going to stop when the time becomes earlier than January 1st of this year. All right, and now I'm going to read in my zip file. I'm going to shuffle this file again. In this case, we are going to be taking just a sample of them. We're going to look at all of the OCT place IDs, but we're just going to take a sample of other place IDs in the city. We can't look at all of them. It's going to take way too long for this case. All right, and now I'm going to have the same setup as before for actually reading in the different files. I'm going to enumerate all of the info lists. This is keeping track of all the names of the files in my data set. And then I'm going to try to extract the place ID from the actual file name. Split by underscore, take the third part, split it again by the period. Okay, and take the first one. So if you don't remember this, go back to the graph example. This is, I'm just taking the name of the file and I'm getting a portion of it, which is the place ID. And I'm using the try structure here because in some cases they might find a different file doesn't have that structure. It's basically going to give you an error, and it's going to capture that and then continue to the next example. Alright, so that will give me the place ID. So now I'm looking at the whole zip file and I'm looking at every place in turn, right? But I'm not interested in every place. I'm only interested in places which are in this OCT, which I have a record of, or they're random sampling of some number of other places that I'm going to compare the OCT to. So to set that up, I'm going to have two if statements. The first one will check if the place ID that I'm currently looking at is in my OCT list of files. Okay, so you should already know how to do this. I have my POIID variable, and I say if POIID is in the target list. All right, so remember the target list has all my OCT locations. So I'm going to test, is my current POID of the zip file in that list? And if so, I'm going to start to do something with it, right? I'm going to start to look at those comments and store them for later processing. So I'm going to bring up just one of these. Okay, so it's all files like this, right? It has the POID here. That's what we're extracting. Now if we open up one of these files, it has a row for each comment, right? So it has the timestamp. We're looking at that to make sure we're only looking at the last year. It has the ID of the actual comment. And then here it has the text in the third entry. It has some actual text that's left by the user. And it's this whole thing, right? So what we're going to do in our script is if this matches, if the POID matches, we're going to read in that data file, and we're just going to extract that third piece of information from that from each row of that text file. All right, so this is the same way that we always read in text files. It's exactly the same as with this target list up here. We're going to take the zip file .read and pass in that file. Here we're iterating through both the number of the file and the actual file name. So here we can quickly read in this file from that zip file. And then we're going to split all the data by lines into our entries array. This will contain all of the entries from this POID. We're going to pop off the first entry, because this is still, the first entry always contains descriptors, right? And then for each, we're going to cycle through all the entries. So now we're just going line by line in this data set, right? The first thing I'm going to do is look at the time. This will just limit my search to only things within the last year. I'm only doing this to speed things up, okay? Eventually, once this all works, you can decide for yourself, okay? You can work on all the history of all the comments. Just in this case, I'm going to be very specific so we can run through this processing within the class time, okay? You could look at all the comments. You could look at every place in Shenzhen, and it will work. You just need a lot of RAM and you need a lot of time. Okay, so I'm going to read in from each entry the time. The time is contained in the first entry. So here I'm splitting the entry by semicolons. I'm taking the first column, right, which contains my time here. And then I'm using the parser to parse that data into a date file format, or a date time format. Once I have that time stored in the date time format, I can simply say if the time of that post is less than the max time, which I set here is January 1st, then I will break that part of the loop. And what break does is it'll break out of this entire loop. And effectively it'll go on to the next POID. Okay? Continue will go on to the next entry in the POID. Break will exit out of the whole POID loop and go back to the zip file. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is actually get the text information. Alright, so it's the same idea as here. I'm going to look at the entry. I'm going to split the entry by the semicolon. I'm going to take index 2. This is the third piece in my data set, right, which is all the text comments. So there's a few really useful ways for troubleshooting and testing things. Obviously, I don't want to hit run now because it's going to every time run through the whole zip file. Okay? What I really want to do is just kind of go through the structure, and then once it does the first thing, I want to print something out that proves that it does it, and then I'm just going to exit out of the program. Okay? I could just run it and then use this run restart kernel that will physically stop Python. But a really useful library that I think I've probably already used and never really dwelled on is the system library. So first we need to import the system library. Okay, so SYS, the system. This has a lot of useful utilities for just working with your program, including a really common function that I use all the time, which is sys.exit parentheses. This function will actually just stop Python at that line. There's a really, if you ever look at my kind of in progress code, I'll have these in different parts of my code commented out. Because at certain points I want to troubleshoot something, I'll uncomment that and break at that point. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through the zip file. As soon as it finds a POID I'm interested in, it's going to look through all the text. It's going to find the text here, and I'm just going to print that text just so I have a visual sort of proof that this is working the way I want. And then once it's done through all the entries in that POID, I'm going to do this sys exit. Okay? And it's important where you put this. So if I put this here, it's going to stop after it gets the first comment. If I put this here, it's going to stop after it gets all the comments. Is that clear? This is all about where you put things in loops. Okay? If I put it here, it belongs to this loop, which only happens for each comment. If I put it here, it's going to stop in this loop, which happens for each place ID. Okay, I'm going to run this to make sure I don't have any errors. Okay, so I already have some kind of error. Split lines. Okay, so I have this printout. It seems like it's working pretty well. Each comment actually has this, what's it called, like a repost link. This is included with each comment, and it's like a way in Weibo where you can, this is like a hard link to this comment, so you can quickly recomment other people's comments. This for me is garbage because I don't want to incorporate this in my text analysis. Okay, all I want is the physical stuff that people are saying. I don't want to include in my language processing all of this HTML code. So the only other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to split by this HTTP. I'm going to take just the first part of each comment. Okay, so I'm going to add that onto here. Here I'm taking the whole text, and I'm just going to add on a split. I'm going to split by HTTP, so that's found in every single comment. And I'm just going to take the first part of that split. So at this point, I have all my structure for going through the whole zip file, looking at just the place I'm interested in the OCT, and then storing all of the text for each place.